When you think about medieval history, you probably picture this complete mess, right? Battles, betrayals, a totally chaotic timeline. But what if I told you that hidden in plain sight, in the lists of ancient kings, there's a pattern, a structure so perfect it just can't be an accident? Okay, let's get into it.
And we're going to focus on Scotland for this, because it throws up this huge question. Is this super orderly, almost too neat list of its medieval rulers just a fluke, a massive coincidence? Or is it actually a clue, showing us how history itself was written?
So to really get this, we've got to look at the pattern itself. It's this phenomenon that, believe it or not, historians actually have a name for.
Yeah, this whole thing is known as the well-structured Middle Ages. And the concept is pretty wild, right? It suggests there was this period where the king lists weren't just a record of what happened. Nope, they were deliberately arranged. They look almost too neat, too organized to be real. And when we look at Scotland, we can put a very specific time frame on this. It seems to kick off around the 9th century, and then it all comes to this dramatic stop in the year 1286. So for nearly 400 years, something really strange was going on with how the royal successions were being recorded.
So, what does this structure actually look like in Scotland? Well, it turns out to be surprisingly mathematical.
At its very core, this whole era is built on a really simple, repeating foundation. Researchers have found 4 distinct blocks of kings, and each block has exactly 6 kings. Not 5, not 7, always 6.
Okay, and when you see it laid out like this, the pattern just pops. It's so clear. You've got these 4 distinct blocks of kings. Look at the first one. It starts with Constantine I and ends with Constantine II. And then block 2, same deal. It starts with Malcolm I and ends with Malcolm II. I mean, come on, that is an incredibly tidy, symmetrical arrangement.
The rules here are weirdly consistent. A block often starts and ends with a king who has the same name. But then you have this one king, Edgar. He's an outlier, sort of awkwardly placed between the 3rd and 4th blocks. But far from disproving the pattern, his weird placement actually seems to highlight just how deliberate the structure around him is. He's like the exception that proves the rule.
So, we've got this strange pattern in Scotland. But was it just a Scottish thing? Or was this a piece of something much, much bigger?
Before we go there, I just want you to look at this number. 27. Just hold that number in your head for a second. 27. That's the total number of kings on this well-structured Scottish list. And that includes our outlier, Edgar. It's the grand total of all those monarchs, all neatly arranged.
So, Scotland has 27 kings in this structured period. Seems pretty specific, right? Maybe even a bit random. But what if it isn't random at all?
And this is where the story goes from strange to absolutely mind-blowing. Because during the very same historical era, you look at Denmark's king list, and it also has 27 rulers. And Hungary? You guessed it, 27 kings. I mean, think about that. 3 completely different countries, separated by hundreds of miles, and they all have the exact same number of kings. The chances of that just happening by coincidence, it's basically 0.
And it just keeps going. This pattern seems to spread across Northern and Eastern Europe. If you take out a few of those irregular kings, just like Edgar in Scotland, you find that both Poland and Norway also have 27 rulers. So this isn't some Scottish quirk, it's a whole regional phenomenon, and that really points to some kind of shared blueprint.
So how on earth do you explain this? Well, the research points to 2 main theories. First, maybe all these king lists were literally written by the same person or group, working from one single source. Or second, maybe there was a master template out there, a kind of how-to guide for structuring a kingdom's history that was being passed around and adapted by all these different nations.
But everything has to end, right? Even meticulously structured histories. So how did this perfect, orderly era finally come crashing down in Scotland?
It all hinges on the death of one king, Alexander III. His death wasn't just a political crisis, it was the event that completely shattered this historical structure. As the old kingdom of Alba spiraled into its downfall, so did the whole idea of a well-structured Middle Ages in Scotland. The neat, tidy narrative just slammed into the wall of chaotic reality.
And that reality was, well, it was a total mess. So in 1286, Alexander III dies, and crucially, he has no male heir. Then, just 4 years later, his young successor, Margaret, dies before she can even get to Scotland. Boom, you've got a power vacuum, England invades in 1296, kicking off the brutal First War of Scottish independence. The neat little blocks of 6 kings, they're gone, replaced by pure chaos, war, and eventually the start of a whole new dynasty with Robert the Bruce in 1306.
So this shows us that the chaos happening in the real world directly matches the end of this neat and tidy symmetry on paper. The carefully built historical story just couldn't survive contact with actual unpredictable history.
And this all leads us to a much bigger, much more fundamental question about what we're actually looking at when we study the past.
What this all strongly suggests is a really powerful conclusion. These early chronicles might not be a simple, faithful record of who ruled and when. They might actually be a story, one that was intentionally shaped and structured to give a sense of order, legitimacy, and maybe even destiny.
So it leaves us with this one massive question, really. When we look back at a list of kings from 1,000 years ago, are we really looking through a clear window into the past as it actually happened? Or are we actually looking at a perfectly crafted story, a piece of literature designed by its authors to be read in a very specific way? Kind of makes you rethink what history is, doesn't it?